Also important to, I think, distinguish a bit, or maybe define a bit what actually Web3 is, right? In the sense that I think today a lot of the products or projects or infrastructures we have in Web3 are basically just a token database, right? I think in tech you should always have an open mind, right? And you should always be as objective as possible. Because otherwise I think you miss out on things. Believe in a future where everyone will be able to code their own app and deploy their own app on the internet computer by just prompting, right? So we make, in theory, everyone a developer.
Yes.
But then if you only rely on the AI, you miss out on a lot of things, right? It's a completely different business etiquette in Web3 than there is in the rest of the world. I really think it's important. It's very important to bridge that. The core fundament of Web3, in my view, is freedom, right? And is the ability to think about what does sovereignty really mean. And we have something coming up where AI is actually able to build applications on the internet computer and directly deploy and give you your app in like 5 minutes.
Lead with vision, inspire with innovation. Enter the genius inside.
Take on the Web Summit this year, or what's your take on the Web Summit?
Well, I think Web Summit is obviously like a major important tech event in Europe, right? And it's a nice opportunity to, have everyone in one place. And I think the most important thing for Web Summit now, coming from a Web3 point of view, is that Web3 is not really separated, right? I mean, in the past you used to have like specific Web3 sections of the Web Summit. That's not the case anymore. So everything is mixed now, which I think is actually the way to go, right? I mean, Web3 should become the new web, so it shouldn't be like its own separate bubble.
A lot of people say that the future is hybrid, in the sense that, people have stopped using chariots and carts and horses, but there are still people using horses, and there will still be people using combustion vehicles, but also hydrogen, electric, and other sources.
Yeah.
And do you think that in terms of web, will the Web3, will the scape, or will the environment will still be hybrid, in the sense that we'll still have Web 2 and Web 3?
Yeah, for sure. For a long time is my guess, right? I mean, if you look at other examples, I think there's always like two mistakes we make as humans when we deal with new technology, right? Number one is like we tend to overestimate the short-term impact, right? So in Web 3, like in 2018 when we had or 17, 18 when we had the first big hype, like everyone was thinking that, next year or the year after everything is going to be Web 3, right? So that's not going to happen that quick. The second mistake, though, is we tend to underestimate the long-term impact of it, right? And maybe take the e-commerce part as an example, right? I mean, when Amazon launched and everyone thought like, this is the end of brick and mortar, right?
Yes.
We still have brick and mortar around here, right?
Of course. Yeah.
However, I can clearly observe that brick and mortar becomes less and less and less and less, and online shopping really becomes a new standard, even for groceries, right? So I think a similar thing will happen with Web3. However, it's also important to, I think, distinguish a bit, or maybe define a bit what actually Web3 is, right? In the sense that I think today a lot of the products or projects or infrastructures we have in Web3 are basically just a token database, right? And everything else is anyways Web 2 with them. So if something is built on, pick one chain, Solana or Ethereum, it doesn't really mean it's built on that chain, right? The logic and the token database and everything is on chain, but front end, back end, data storage, everything is off chain today.
Yes.
So, and this is, by the way, where the internet computer has a different design, because it's a true world computer where everything is on chain.
Yeah. And do you think that this has been one of the reasons why adoption has not really taken off? Front-end solutions are hard to develop and integrate between Web 2 and Web 3?
Well, that might be one part, but I think The main part why it hasn't been taking off so far is two things in my view. Clunkiness of user experience is definitely one. If you don't make this as Web 2 as possible from a user experience, then there will be no adoption, right? And that's what I meant, like under the hood, people shouldn't care if it's Web 2 or Web 3, right? It just should feel fluid. And the second thing is a bit of, the kind of tribalism we have between different technologies and the different ecosystems. So I really think like there needs to be that, however you want to call it, blockchain singularity or whatever, like we need to have a seamless multi-chain operation.
Yeah, this leads to another question, which is quite interesting. We've the Portuguese Blockchain Alliance started informally in 2017, and from the onset, there were a lot of subcultures. A lot of people, no, we're the ones, we're the true ones. Other people would say, no, this is we're maximalists, we're this, we're that. Do you think that this is not helping the growth of the community and the expansion of Web3 as a more pervasive solution, because there's a lot of tribalist culture to it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a problem, I think, when it comes to real adoption. I think there's nothing wrong about being really proud of the tech community you're part of, right? And there's always that thin line between evangelizing for what you think is the right thing and then being a maximalist, which means you by nature exclude other stuff, right? I think in tech you should always have an open mind, right? And you should always be as objective as possible, because otherwise I think you miss out on things.
Yeah, I agree. You picked up on a theme that is very dear to us at the Genius Inside, which is being open-minded and being open to other perspectives. What are the skills of the future? What do you think are the really important skills of the future?
A couple of things, and one thing is for sure being capable of bridging tech and business, right? I think it becomes more and more important to understand tech and bridge it to the business side. That's a shortage, by the way, the entire industry anyways have. So you have a lack of people that are capable of understanding the fundamental concepts and then translating it into a language that is accessible for everyone. The second thing is, and this goes a bit hand in hand with the rise of AI, right? I mean, the use of AI is going to increase more and more. So I think it's key to learn how to be how to use AI as a co-pilot. Right? So you really need to understand how AI works, how you use it, how you judge the outcome. Potentially also, I mean, we believe in a future where everyone will be able to code their own app and deploy their own app on the internet computer by just prompting, right? So we make, in theory, everyone a developer.
Yes.
But then if you only rely on the AI, you miss out on a lot of things, right? So that's why the skill that you need to have is to understand the basic kind of tech logic around it.
Yeah. This leads to what made you move, because it's your experience in management consulting and in let's call it non Web3 spaces definitely gives you a lot of not just background and experience, but a lot of insights that are quite helpful to the Web3 space. Do you see this as also a necessary component for people to have this mix of non-Web3 and Web3 experience to help the Web3 grow?
Yeah, 100%, because otherwise, I mean, you're caught up in that bubble, right? And given that Web3 is such a unique place, right? And it's also such a fun place in terms of its unique traits and how things work, right? I mean, business happens on Telegram, right? Not in actual meetings, or things are sent around like as loose files. So there's a completely different business etiquette in Web3 than there is in the rest of the world. I really think it's very important to bridge that, right? Because my observation was like, and I've been in that kind of crypto Web3 space since end of 2014, working then still as a management consultant, right? You could get away in 2015-16 with being like that Web3 guy in shirts and in a t-shirt and some flip-flops, right? And showing up at a corporate, because then it was the innovation topic.
Yeah.
So innovation departments were willing to kind of, try something out with these new guys, right? But now the topic has matured, and also blockchain is not an innovation hype topic anymore. So if you want to land adoption, you need to adopt also to the people that you want to sell to, right?
What are the necessary skills to bridge from Web3 to Web2 and from Web2 to Web3?
Yeah, so from Web3 to Web2, the most important thing is to understand user journey, right? Because, I mean, as soon as you're entrenched into Web3, for you it becomes super native to use wallet, to understand what all the vocabulary means, like nodes, passkeys, seed phrases, whatnot, right? You need to be able to translate, because people in Web 2 or general that are not in Web 3, you will help them a lot when you make them, or when you enable them to understand what's going on, right? So that's a key trait. On the other hand, I think, it's debatable if anything in Web 2 needs to change, right? I mean, these guys are happy with what they're doing. I think it's more around figuring out that there are some shortcomings in the current setup, which is big tech lock-in, which is a significant exposure to cyber attacks that you have in the current setup, and so on.
Yeah. This leads to two questions as well, which is big tech lock-in, because people are really trying to unlock big tech from their privacy or from their data, and at the same time, again, back to finding a better version of yourself, which is what have you identified in the Web3 space that you think it's very useful to the Web2 or the non-Web3 space, which shows a lot of better version of themselves?
Well, I think for sure this entire ethos of Web3, right, which comes from Bitcoin first, and then from Ethereum, and then it translated into every project. The core fundament of Web3, in my view, is freedom, right, and is the ability to think about what does sovereignty really mean. And even if you don't become a fan of Web3 or you don't become entrenched, just by thinking about these principles, I think people will become a better version of themselves, right? Because all of a sudden there's this thought process triggered, like take Bitcoin as an example, right? There's this thought process triggered. What is money actually, right? With Web3, there's this thought process triggered, like, why should I think about a decentralized version of things? Like, what can actually happen? Because things are fine until they're not, right?
Yes.
And, so I think Web3 by nature, this is also what drove me into the space, right? It has a very idealistic idea of the future.
What drove you? You mentioned what drove you to the space, and what drove you to Internet Computer?
So first of all, as I mentioned, I've been in the space since 2004, end of 2014. So I've seen a lot of projects in depth, right? A lot of projects come and go, and at my time at Roland Berger, when I was, had the pleasure to work with many different projects and so on, Definity was also my client. So I had a very good, chance to look under the hood and see what's going on. So two things that basically made it clear for me that I want to join these guys. Number one is, I think that the tech is really the best in the business, because it is really that full stack approach where you have a real world computer with front and back end data. There are some design decisions that the engineers made that I think make a lot of sense for a new version of internet compute, which is reverse gas fees, which is a core level integration with Bitcoin and Ethereum, so you really achieve this singularity. They can run, our infrastructure can run AI models on chain, and we have something coming up where AI is actually able to build applications on the internet computer and directly deploy and give you your app in like 5 minutes.
So do you think this is going to be a killer app for low code or no code?
Yeah, I think so. And I can go back to that and maybe just finish. The second point is people, right? I mean, the internet computer has the largest R&D team in Web3. They're serious, renowned cryptographers and really smart people, which, if you look at the space in general, I think we're lacking a bit sometimes, right? You always have to have this balance between, hungry entrepreneurs and kids that just want to break something down, right? But on the other side, there's also a lot of value to having a solid R&D team.
Yes.
A strong background. But back to your question on the low code part, I think this is really going to be a game changer, because the problem today that we have with the current IT stack is that, yes, you can take Claude, and Claude can produce you a nice code, and then it's up to you to deploy it, right? But the deployment is very cumbersome, because in the current tech setup, you have so many different layers that you need to address when you deploy an application: database, a front-end server, data storage, and obviously a lot of cybersecurity that you need to take care of. When applications run on the internet computer, you literally need no cybersecurity elements in there, because it all runs in a smart contract. And the second thing is that you don't have all of these different layers of complexity where an AI would need to deploy an application. And that's why the solution we're working on is you prompt something and it's immediately deployed. So you get the URL, because the AI can just deploy it with no friction. And the second thing is, don't want to get too technical, but the language that is used on the internet computer in combination with the smart contract setup enables something called orthogonal persistence, which in a nutshell just means that the data can stick to the code. So when you update applications, it's almost like in real time, basically, in terms of data, and you don't need to have a cumbersome update of databases, and then things break in the update.
Got it.
So,
but this is independent of the modularity of code that could be transported to other apps, or so this object concept of using code for multiple applications, right?
Yes, however, the benefit of this is that it all plays into one stack, right? So you build everything. AI is going to build everything on the internet computer.
Okay. Again, what do you see as a great way to get into Web3 if you have zero knowledge? Let's put it, and it's not a zero knowledge proof. If you just have no knowledge of Web3 and blockchain, what would be your best advice for an executive? There are still a lot of executives that have no idea what we're talking about here.
Yeah, two things. Number one is I recommend everyone to read the Bitcoin Standard, right? Even if you don't make it through the entire book, if you just read the first 3 chapters, it will already give you an idea of the basic fundamental principles of why we need distributed systems, right? But that's obviously pretty much focused on the monetary part, the value part of things. Second thing, I would just encourage for everyone to visit internetcomputer.org, one of the other projects that are building great stuff, because there you see a lot of good examples of what you can actually do. And the third thing is, I know sometimes might be a bit harder for people that don't have a tech background, but I really think Web3 is a contact sport, right? It's like a combat sport.
Yeah.
You can read a lot about it, but until you do it, you don't really get it.
Yeah.
Exactly. You don't really experience it. So just try something out. Whether it's just easy stuff, create a wallet somewhere, send $10 in whatever currency you pick somewhere, and get going. And then obviously when our AI module is live, then try it out, create your own app in 5 minutes.
We're Heading towards the last part of the interview, so I'd really like to hear your thoughts on what are the trends that will be game changers. You just mentioned kind of a killer app for low code or no code,
Mm-hmm.
but do you see any other game changing trends that will actually also change consumer behavior and change society as a whole?
Yeah, so I think there are a couple of things. Number one is, again, that AI part, and AI in two different elements. One is AI being able to build and ship and update apps,
Mm-hmm.
making app stores redundant, maybe,
Yes.
right? Disrupting a lot of the software industry. Second is the ability to run AI on a decentral computer, like in a smart
Mhm.
contract, because that will solve, to a large extent, the problem that can occur from central AI.
Mhm.
And by the way, I don't believe that we're going to have a world where it's only decentral or central AI. It's going to be a hybrid. Right?
Mhm.
Second big trend, I think, is we're going to go towards DeFi singularity, where interoperability becomes key,
Mhm.
and we're going to have a DeFi system where you can trade any asset you want. You don't need to switch wallets. You don't need to switch systems, and so on. And then I think it's going to become a trend, but it's always the question: will we have the triggers for the trend to actually pick off? I think there is going to be a lot of rethinking around cybersecurity and how exposed actually the current setup we have with a lot of centralized IT, and with even if it's on the cloud, with access of governments to cloud data. I think that would probably trigger a rethinking on what a real sovereign IT setup is for countries and for corporations. And then lastly, I think we see it now. Bitcoin, I think as we speak, is $92,000, making all-time highs during the Web Summit, which is a nice occasion.
Yes.
I think Bitcoin really will become mainstream, and if Bitcoin becomes mainstream as an asset class, then obviously the entire space has a chance to become mainstream.
Mm-hmm. Okay, got it. Any final thoughts before we conclude, or are you good with sharing these insights? And
No, all good.
great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
It has been a pleasure to hear your insights.
Yeah,
and
thanks for having me.
thanks.
All right.
Thank you. Okay.